Hello, welcome to the latest episode of Data Unchained. I'm your host, Molly Presley. If you have not joined Data Unchained before, let me tell you just a little bit more about what this podcast is about. If you think back, if you're old enough, have been in the industry long enough to the days of the mainframe 30 or 40 years ago, data sets were really isolated and consolidated into a single data center kind of hovering around a mainframe. And with evolutions that have occurred in technology in all different types of areas, networks, software, infrastructure, where people are working, that has really changed with the advent of the cloud, with the advent of fast networking, through COVID, users who are using data moved more remotely. And then even today, as you think about GPU computing, and sometimes the compute is not local to where the data is being processed. All of these things have led to a really decentralized world of data. And in this podcast, we talk about the opportunities that are hidden within that data, as well as some of the challenges to gain access to it. So without further ado, I'll first mention if the recording quality is not as good as some of our other episodes, I am down in Costa Rica doing another Data Unchained Costa Rica version, or doing another Data Unchained Costa Rica episode. But we wanted to make sure as we're getting ready to ramp up for IBC and some of the really exciting things that our joint customers with today's guest have going on, that we didn't miss the opportunity to have this episode. So without further ado, Dennis Rose is today's guest. He is the Chief Revenue Officer at Sohonet. Dennis, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Molly. Thanks for having us. It's really a pleasure to join you today.
So Dennis, before we talk about technology, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're probably one of the more colorful, really interesting guests that we've had on the show. Tell us a little bit about your background.
I have been called the International Man of Mystery more than once. I have a lot of experience overseas. It started as a child. My father had a similar job. So I've lived or worked in Europe, Latin America, and Asia Pacific for a total of 26 years outside of the U.S. And so I've got a background in technology. I started in general tech long time ago, and eventually evolved into streaming, and then into Deluxe Entertainment, where I worked for several years, and now the last almost 7 years with Sohonet. I'm based in Florida, but I divide my time between London and LA, and of course other places where film and TV is produced in Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, Atlanta, and others. And I guess I'm lucky having lived overseas. It's given me a lot of opportunity, and I guess one of my interests is trend spotting. And when I had an opportunity to go to China and Hong Kong and Singapore for 15 years, I welcomed it because I saw that it was going through change, and I think change breeds opportunity, as the cliche goes, but it's true, and so I think the same is true of our industry today.
Probably a lot of listeners to the show, some of them are from the media industry, others are not. But maybe can you talk just really basically about where are the big production hubs for media and entertainment? You're strategically located in certain cities for a reason, but maybe share a little bit more about what that background is, and once film is captured from wherever it comes from, where it goes to these studios.
Sure. So, the vast majority of film and TV in the Western world is produced in LA, New York, and London. American TV has a special place, and that's Vancouver. A lot of American television is filmed there because of quality of the talent in that area, but also because of tax credits. And then the whole post-production process you'll find in those same cities, but also you'll find special places like Montreal and Toronto, Ireland, Wales, and Northern England that have great post facilities. And of course, I can't forget a mix of both shoot studios where things are filmed, but an emerging post-production environment, and that's good old Atlanta, Georgia. So for the Western world, those are the major hubs. The emerging ones would be Mexico City, and I would also add Bogota, Colombia, and that's mostly because the investment by the streamers, namely Netflix and Amazon, there's a lot that's produced, but now there's a lot that's posted in those markets, and the quality and the level of talent there has been rising very quickly.
So decentralized everything, infrastructure, data, content, certainly something Sohonet deals with a lot. Tell us a little bit about Sohonet. What does the company do?
Sure. So Sohonet is a firm based in the UK. We're 30 years young, so next year we celebrate our 30th anniversary. We have about 170 employees, and we provide services exclusively to film, TV, and I would say advertising, but movie and film advertising, like movie trailer houses. We connect, all told, when delivered services to about 100,000 people in the industry. And those solutions or service areas really start on the set. So on set, we provide set services like phones and Wi-Fi and internet for crews and cast. Once film starts going offset, we work with editorial, color, VFX, the rest of post, sound engineering, subtitling, and dubbing studios. And for those customers, we provide networking services. So we connect them literally on a private network between their facility and the studio. And then we also have software applications that help the people in the industry collaborate. And those would be editors, producers, directors, VFX supervisors, cinematographers. And those applications are more SaaS-like. And that's really the growth area for Sohonet for the last 9 or 10 years, on top of a wonderful private network that's been built over a 30-year period, where we connect over 60 production studios with almost 700 sound stages around the world. We, for the last decade, have been helping them with software applications that actually help them get their work done.
So, Dennis, the idea of long distance workflows has changed a lot in maybe just the last 10 years, even. Can you talk a little bit? How did long distance workflows and file transfers work 10 years ago versus today?
It was literally a different time, a different era. We're not that far away from the time when a scene got finished on set, that it would be genned by the video village, the data wrangler, onto some disk drives and put in a van and driven across town to the studio or the post house. And that truly was recent history. And of course, not only is it less than secure, because as recent as 3 years ago, I recall reading a report that 13 disk drives were stolen out of just cars broken into that had unreleased content on them. So it's also slow.
Oh, wow.
It's a time consuming. And the ability for people to collaborate, it often meant that you had to drive down the 401 or wherever you happen to be on 285 in Atlanta and go back to the studio to look at a scene to avoid doing a pickup the next day, meaning a reshoot. And so just a decade ago, things were manual. They were physical in terms of moving a disk drive physically from one point to the other. And of course, it went slower. And of course, a lot has changed. That well before COVID, tax credits started pulling different parts of work around the globe to VFX studios in Vancouver and Montreal, to scoring stages in Prague in the Czech Republic. And digital has really allowed the transformation of the way we work in the film and TV industry.
I think that's fascinating. So I think there's a saying, in fact, I'm pretty sure I've heard you say it, that you really want to let creatives be creative and not worry so much about the technology, right? Let them spend their time creating. And so some of these evolutions have really enabled that. Maybe we can unpack this in a few different ways. So people become decentralized, these creative teams. Like you said, there's talent in Canada. Maybe there's a specific pocket of talent in Europe you want to access. These creatives now, they're not really shipping disk drives around there's once they're actually doing visual effects and finishing and post-production, that's really being done digitally, and they're not necessarily sitting as studio together. Would you agree with that?
That's exactly right. I mean, even the consumer, when you sit at the end of a movie and watch the credits, and you're just amazed on how many post-production companies work on a large tentpole feature. And they're all over the place. They can be in New York, London. They might be in Dallas. They could be in Hong Kong or Singapore. And so a couple things have helped, I guess, enable the ability for people to work apart. One is obviously internet has gotten better. Secondly, we deliver internet to sets all over the world, but we also have a private network. Most internet can't handle the size of files that are created by digital cameras now in 4K, and of course some production company shooting in 8K. So moving it across a private network on fiber, where you've got every studio connected to it, such as the case with Sohonet's Sohonet Media Network, is really the way to go. But even so, there's people who want to work at home, and improved residential and commercial internet has helped that as well. Some of the equipment involved, of course, has helped, but so has cloud. Cloud has enabled people to put their data in a centralized place where you can collaborate and work on it there. Hammerspace, of course, always says local access to global data, and it really is the case. Data today for most film and TV projects is absolutely global. It has to be in many places so that the people with the talent or the locations with the tax credits can work on it.
So you mentioned the internet that you provide. I think all of us know pretty much, at least in the areas you're talking about, folks are fairly connected, but a robust network infrastructure that's fast, doesn't drop frames. There's some kind of specialty things I would say about media production that they need from their networking. Can you talk a little bit more about what specifically do you provide? What problems do you solve that whichever connectivity maybe they have in place today may be failing a customer?
Sure, of course. So even though commercial internet has gotten much better than it was a decade ago, it still has its limitations. Number one, you're contending with everybody on that city block or in that section of the city for that piece of fiber. So you could have hundreds of people on the same circuit that you are. And so the speeds in reality will be limited. On a private network, you've got your own piece of fiber. You're going at full speed. In our case, what we do as a managed service for our customers, we constantly in real time monitor the network. We know when if there is a fault, we know within microseconds. For example, a car may hit a utility pole and bring down a piece of fiber in Vancouver, or could be famous in New York in the summertime, a manhole explosion, a fire because gas is built up. And so all sorts of things happen. Recently this year in LA, there's been a spike in vandalism. And so there's all sorts of things that will cause a network interruption. We can reroute and redirect within seconds a customer to a different path and allow them to keep operating. So those things are important. Secondly is the level of security. So the Sohonet Media Network, a private network, is inherently going to be more secure. We subscribe to the MovieLabs 2030 vision of zero trust. So we assume that every person accessing any content on the network has to be validated and authorized to actually touch that piece of content. So security, I think, is something that it also differentiates how it used to be with drive and disk drives in a car to operating over a worldwide fiber private network. And the resiliency, the ability to scale. So the common connection in a home today is probably between 500 megs and a gig, and we do 400 gig pipes between our metro. So we have plenty of capacity, and that's why all the major movie studios use the Sohonet Media Network. It's safe, it's scalable, and it is reliable in the sense of we can build in redundancy at any level.
Those are all tough things to beat, and certainly important to these big production companies. What about bursty workloads? What does your model look like if somebody is needing to move a lot of content somewhere else, or maybe they're doing some rendering? How does that part of your business model or the access to the connectivity work for your customers?
Well, it's changed. It's changed over time. We used to provide circuits, and let's say a 1 gig circuit to a visual effects studio. And when they had a large project come in and they had more payloads that they had to push up to be rendered in the cloud, we had to burst that circuit for a limited period of time. The customer would typically say, I need it for 12 hours, I need it for 12 days, and we would burst it up to 5 gigs or 10 gigs and then bring it back down. It used to be that there was an extra charge for that, and it had to be scheduled. A couple years back, we changed that model. It's much easier now. We sell a service called multiport, and it's basically a port that allows you to run multiple services over it. It can be internet, it can be the Sohonet Media network connection. It could be a direct connect that's burstable that goes to AWS, to Google Cloud, to Azure, or many other public cloud service providers. And now the customer decides how much of that 3, 5, or 10 gig port they want to allocate to internet or SMN pushing payloads up to the public cloud service to be rendered. And it's much more agile. And because, work is never consistently the same, especially in visual effects. So the customers love this product and they're able to burst it on, basically on demand, and be able to have that flexibility that when it's no longer needed, then they can reallocate that bandwidth back to either a point-to-point or to just a general internet for their business applications. And I really think that's what has changed in the industry. We're moving more toward customer empowerment. There's a lot of things, even though we're a managed service company, we believe also the customers who are very capable in this industry, as you know, great engineers, they want the ability to do things that they can do locally. But on the other hand, they're creatives. And so I'm going back to the statement you made before. The managed service capabilities that we provide, 7x24 global support, allow somebody to focus on their creative vision of telling the story and not having to worry about the technology.
That's amazing. I think the way things have evolved, but also the flexibility that exists now is just astounding. As you think, we have a joint customer, Hammerspace and Sohonet, do out in France that's working on both France 2030 vision and also as a studio doing production. So over at Mathematic Studios, they're taking advantage of a lot of the things that you've talked about. And I like to call them out because Clement Germain is one of the lead people who's really evangelizing a new way to do work, using the cloud, using remote workforce, taking advantage of tax credits. But he's one of the folks who's really leaned in on all these pieces of new technology and put them together into a workflow. And it's pretty amazing what he's done, not just for his own studio, but in this France 2030 vision. Do you mind sharing just a little bit about what France 2030 is and kind of what your perspective is on how Clement has put together their workflows?
Well, the France 2030 vision, and I would say especially Mathematic, believes very much in a world of computing where we can reduce our carbon footprint, where we can do things that are more mindful and sustainable. The folks at Mathematic are extremely talented, but they're also smart business people, and they find the best possible talent around the world to work on their projects. They, for the listening audience, if you don't know Mathematic TV, they do some of the world's premier music videos. They do beauty work, meaning visual effects on lifestyle and cosmetic and other types of ads that focus on the beauty market. They do visual effects for features and episodic. They're very, very talented, but they're very grounded people in the sense of they have a true dedication to the environment, and the France 2030 vision is a part of that. In fact, they have a data center in France that takes some of the recycled water that cools their computing equipment because it's water cooled, sending it in a pipe across the street to a swimming pool, which was the practice pool for the Olympics. So they really walk the walk. Mathematic is a great customer of Hammerspace and Sohonet. We're both proud to serve them. And of course, they find value in what Hammerspace delivers in the sense of that local access to global data, having one namespace, because doing their work in such a distributed manner, their data sets have to be in many places. And anything that can make that easier to work with, such as Hammerspace, treating data as if it's basically at your fingertips, even though it may be halfway around the world. That's what allows creatives to focus on their creative vision, and again, not have to worry about technology. Nobody wants to worry about technology these days.
No, if you're not in IT, you just want to be able to have everything magically, kind of automatically there, like it is on your cell phone, right?
That's right. Hammerspace and Sohonet are behind the scenes with every move.
We are kind of working heavily behind the scenes to make it have that experience. And as you think about it, one of the analogies that our CEO uses a lot that I really like is, for us to envision this new world of, wow, my data could be stored anywhere, but I'm going to use it everywhere. It's kind of hard to get your head around what that really means. And, this idea of if you have a cell phone, which I think everyone does, and you think about your photos, your images, your texts, you don't really know where they're stored, but nonetheless, you can share those photos, see them real time with, your partner or your family. There can be updates to, collaborative folders, and all of a sudden they're there. So that experience you get with your phone where you don't really know where your content is stored, you don't know what networks it's running across, is what we're delivering with enterprise content or studio content. And that's, an amazing change in the way enterprises are running their businesses. And that could be enterprises in really any market. But media and entertainment is always on the bleeding edge because they are creative. There's a ton of demand for more content faster. We all want our next Netflix show, quicker. And we're used to really, immersive content like, Mathematic creates. So it's interesting to see consumer stuff coming all the way through to this big video production. But I always like to share kind of what we're talking about in a way that people can kind of get.
You make a good point because there are parallels between where the industry has come and the consumer life that we live. We don't know where electricity comes from in most cases. We don't know where our water is coming from. And
Right.
frankly, we don't care as long as it's reliable, it's clean electricity, meaning it's not going up in amperage, up and down, and then of course that your water is good quality. And I think that's what creatives want. They want good tools. They want to be able to work from anywhere. It used to be, of course, like everything, they would come to the studio. Now they're not coming to the studio. A director is always on the move, and producers are often on the move as well. But creatives have shifted from a go to the studio type of lifestyle to working where it makes the most sense. There's a studio in Europe that has a brilliant colorist who's in Belgium, and when we first met him, they were on just a different service, and it was driving him crazy because it was distracting him. And so we solved it with a better connection, and we still service them today. People want to be able to have something that just works, and so great products, whether they're hardware, software, or cloud-based, you just want that reliability built in. It's tough being creative. We always hear writers' jokes and things like that, but even whether you work in color, sound, visual effects, subs and dubs, all of those workflows are very challenging. So I think if we can serve the industry, Hammerspace, Sohonet, and others like us, to make tools that are easy and reliable, that makes storytelling so much better and so much easier for the creatives.
Absolutely. And we've talked a lot about your networking capabilities. Can you share a little bit more about ClearView and some of the other tools that you provide that are helping with this overall problem as well?
Sure. ClearView is a family. So it came out in 2015. So it's approaching 10 years old. It's won two Emmy Engineering Awards, one for ClearView Flex, the entry point product, and one for ClearView Pivot, which is a more advanced product that's really perfect for finishing reviews or color reviews or VFX reviews. But think of it as this: if you are an artist and your producer is in New York, but you're in Los Angeles, but you want to be able to review some work and make creative decisions as to whether, yep, you nailed it, or whether it needs a little bit more work. Again, the old ways would be sending a disk drive, or sometimes some vendors along the way, you would upload a file to the other side, they would upload theirs, you would synchronize them. It was very time consuming, very unwieldy. What we do is wherever the video source is, ClearView Flex, which started out as an appliance, a hardware box, would connect to your video source, whether it's Avid editing system or Resolve or Premiere Pro, whatever you worked in, didn't matter, as long as it had an SDI port. And now you can do it through NDI as well, which is a IP-based protocol. It basically sends the stream into the Flexbox. The Flexbox encrypts it and encodes it and sends it out either over internet, or if you happen to be on our network, it can work on that as well. Even if you're working on internet, though, we take the stream, and at the nearest telephone company building where we always have equipment, they call them POPs, points of presence, we'll actually put it on our private backbone, which is blazingly fast, and move it from LA to New York. And basically, you have less than 100 milliseconds of delay. So think of it this way. That's 3 to 4 frames of delay. So 24 frames a second. So it's about 1/10, 1/9 of a second delay. So when you're working with your producer and you are the artist and they say, oh, hang on, you see that car? The U is a little bit off. And if you're working with 10 seconds of delay over Zoom or some other product, you'd say, what car? Because you don't even see it yet. But this way, you're working together, you see the same thing, you can make that creative decision and get your work done. So ClearView allows you to have what they call real-time collaboration. You can work on something, there's audio channel within the app, you can talk to each other. If you want to have a separate Zoom, you still can. But it allows creatives to make editing, color grading, visual effects, sound, many decisions on the creation or post-production work being done on an asset without having to jump on a plane and fly back or wait for a disk drive to be sent to you. We evolved that family into ClearView Pivot, which goes very high resolution, very deep color depth, enormously great sound, over thousands of miles with the same sub 100 millisecond latency. And think of it as a post house in Atlanta, which is a true example, sending the finished picture to a group of executives in one of the major studios in Burbank, who are all sitting in a nice, comfortable theater. And it's streaming from Atlanta, and they're reviewing it. And they can stop, they can use a laser, they can make comments and final touches. And again, nobody has to jump on a plane and endure TSA or bad airport food or anything
Delays,
else. And
storms.
so ClearView has transformed the industry. And of course, during COVID, when people had to work in remotely, it really took off. But there's every major studio uses them, and it's been a game changer for creative decision making.
Amazing. So as we tie up, I wanted to call attention to something you mentioned earlier, that is a really neat group pulling a lot of these technologies and principles together. So you mentioned MovieLabs, and some of the folks who listen to the show will be deeply familiar with them, others will not be. But I think it's worth talking about. One of the cool things that MovieLabs has done, and this is a conglomerate of all the the major studios working together to figure out how do we keep movie production accelerating, right? I mean, that's effectively their goal at the rate that we're accustomed to seeing.
That's right. It started years ago to solve a problem, and the problem was every studio had decided to try to have their own vision of what the future looked like and their own set of security standards, and it was driving post houses crazy, and because you couldn't serve 6 masters. And so finally the industry came together, formed this organization. Every major studio is a member of it, and what they have done is, over a series of editions of a vision guide, they have delivered what their vision of moving video-based workflows into the cloud, what that will look like, and how it will be done over the next decade. And it's really good because everybody who is in the film and TV business somehow touches the cloud. It could be just on your payroll app, or it could be that you are a full-fledged, VFX supervisor sending payloads to be rendered in the cloud. But the industry knows that the old classic hub and spoke architecture, in which people would connect to one place, it just doesn't scale. And so cloud is much more scalable. Cloud gives you efficiency in terms of resources on demand. You've got the ability in terms of scaling, the number of processors that are rendering your payloads. You've got Amazon class or Microsoft class security. You've got reliability because everything is backed up. They can go across multiple data centers. You can't possibly, at a post house level or even a studio level, have the resources that they do. So cloud is, in a way, a no-brainer. The challenge of cloud, of course, has been the cost, the economics of it. Especially once you put data in, that's the easy part. Pulling data out historically has been expensive to do. And there's great software platforms like Arch platform is a great one. There's others like DigitalOcean and Morpheus and Simple Cloud. Those are all what we call data orchestration layers. Those are pieces of software that help film and TV creatives move their workflow into the cloud, organize the data. I know that Hammerspace works in those environments as well. And it allows them to configure the compute and storage, the pixel pushing resources that are needed to do their work and bring it back out. And I think we're definitely on a curve where there is cloud adoption that is growing. There's a few lucky studios. Untold Studios is an example where they were a bunch of guys and ladies that came out of the post houses in London. They decided to form a company, and their first job they won, and that was season 2 post work for The Crown. And they hired 55 freelancers. They set them up in a Regis office. They gave them all 0 client workstations. And when the work was done, they put the workstations on eBay. The freelancers went their other way, and the 4 full-time employees then went looking for their next job. And they had none of that capital investment. They had no equipment to depreciate. They had no assets to worry about paying for until they got their next job, which they did get season 3, which is a great story. They're a great studio. But those ones are the exception still, where they're cloud first. There's tons of companies out there that have Avid systems still sitting under desks in studios, and they're slowly, as they depreciate them, moving toward the cloud. MovieLabs 2030 is a set of guardrails thoughtfully created by the studios and post community to help people move there. And I think it's really important because, we're going to look back. I'm sure there'll be a day we'll look back and somebody 20 years from now will say to an old timer, "You used to have workstations under the desks? Are you kidding me?" It's just like it will be a different world. So yeah, cloud is definitely a part of the industry. The scalability and security are unsurpassed. And I think that some of those companies I mentioned, Hammerspace, Sohonet, we're all helping people get there. We started years ago with direct connects of helping you push things into the cloud. All of our applications like ClearView, our file runner, our file transfer tool, our ClearView, our products that are coming out of our core product, ClearView Rush, those are all products that run in the cloud today. The world today doesn't need installable apps on local clients. It's not as secure. There's more work to do. And so I think if we have a chat in 5 years, Molly, we're going to be looking at a totally different industry that is more embraced and more wrapped around cloud computing than it is today.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's kind of unprecedented. I think it's kind of unprecedented that usually competitors don't collaborate in this way. And you think about the studios that Dennis is talking about is Disney, Paramount, Sony, Universal, and Warner Brothers. So household names that compete. And the fact that they came together and gave this vision to the industry and worked together on what it is I really think, something other industries could learn from. And it's going to help all of them individually as well as the industry, continue to evolve. I love their work. And if you'd like to learn more about it, those of you listening to the show, both Hammerspace as well as Sohonet and others who are in this stack helping to solve these problems have case studies that MovieLabs has put together to help you see, okay, there's a lot of tools that all kind of sound similar, remote access to, remote data and, real-time collaboration, but all the tools do something slightly different. And these case studies help you to see how to put the entire stack together to accomplish what you need. So we'll link some of these case studies to the show. As we tie up, Dennis, I just wanted to thank you so much for joining. I know we have a big trade show coming up here in a couple of months, IBC, the International Broadcasting Convention or Broadcasters Convention out in Amsterdam. Anything new that you want to share, or is that still a little bit under wraps and we don't want to announce anything too early?
I'll share a little bit. We haven't announced it officially yet, but I mentioned ClearView Rush. So ClearView Rush is a derivative product from the acquisition we made of a company called Fifth Kind, which has a phenomenally successful production asset management system that's used by Disney Pictures, Marvel, the rest of Disney. It's used by NBCU, it's used by Warner Brothers, Riot Games, and many others. And from that code base, we're building two purpose-built products, one for dailies and cuts, but not at the set level, but at the studio level. So studio executives have to every day review content coming from the production. And they want to do it on a tool that is intuitive. And there's a couple of products that have been out there in the market for a long time, but they just, they've been there for a long time, and so they haven't been updated. This is modern architecture, very easy to use product. We will officially announce that our plan is at IBC, and I will actually go into beta before that. And then there's another derivative product called StoryLink, which is a fortified version of the production asset management system. We have a lot of other things coming in the alliance space, and you'll see some news coming from us soon in terms of how our reach in the market is going to extend even further. I think IBC is a great show, just like NAB, to highlight what's new in terms of technology, what's new in terms of relationships in the industry. And my parting comment would be this to the listeners, because there's some listeners out there that are not fully in the industry yet. And so if you are young or any age and thinking of getting into this industry, Molly and I work with an industry. It's the sweetest, luckiest spot you can be, and the reason is you get to work with right-brain people who are very creative, the visionaries, the editors, the writers, the directors, and you get to work with very structured people who are left-brain, the people who have to build all these systems and workflows and make them run. And the ability for us, Molly and I, to work with both types of people every day is what really makes working in film and TV just amazing. And it takes a lot of people to make a movie or an episodic show. And if you build your career in this, I warn you, it's addictive. You'll never leave this industry because it is just so satisfying. And so thanks to Molly and to your channel for giving us a voice today. I think podcasts are great ways to learn, and I really am grateful for the opportunity to share some of my experience and my thoughts with you today, Molly. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks for joining, Dennis. Thanks for listening to Data Unchained, powered by Hammerspace. To learn more, visit hammerspace.com. If you have a guest you would like to hear on the show, email me at molly@hammerspace.com.